Welcome everyone, thanks a lot for being here. Welcome to the panel about from the Indignados movement to political organization, political changes in Spain. We are very happy to gonna engage in this discussion here. Normally we can only discuss politics in Spain with Spaniards, so it's always good. I think that if we engage in a discussion also with the other side of the room, normally when you are a Spaniard and you say that you come from Spain and you're here in the US, people ask you like, well, are you from Real Madrid or Barcelona? And in the last months, I think that is increasing. The questions that we get asked is more about, well, what do you think about Spain? What is going on there? Is revolution going to happen or not? What do you think about Podemos? And I think that's a good sign, and also the fact that we are all here this afternoon, I think it's also a good sign that things are changing a little bit. So just to give you a background about what we are going to discuss, an introduction is basically we're going to try to explore how there has been a change of paradigm in Spain in things that before were being discussed as in the periphery of the system, issues that were talked about in corners, in small rooms about among activists, to the centrality of the system, things that are now being discussed in the media every morning, discussions that are taking place in political parties, even though if they are not from the left, like everyone is sort of reacting to the current movement of change in Spain, and I think that process has been quite interesting in the last 4 years, since the 15Ms, since the Indignados movement, and as a reaction to the global financial crisis in Spain. So we are going to try to decode how this movement of political organization has been born, and which things have been left behind, and in which ways are we engaging politically in a different way. Just to give you some context, basically, youth unemployment in Spain right now is more than 50%. Unemployment in general is 23%. There is like more than 300,000 people have emigrated in the last few years as a result of the economic crisis. These are official figures, but it's believed that more than 1 million have indeed emigrated as a result of the crisis, because the figures are not really reliable. So I think that gives you some magnitude about the current political and economic situation in Spain. One of the key issues is also that there has been a clear effort by the government to dismantle social basic services such as education, such as the health system. There has been an effort to privatize hospitals, to go against like social rights such as the right to abortion, such as the right to demonstrate in the streets. So I think that there has been a lot of setbacks to public freedoms in Spain, and also there has been like state bailouts to banks basically that have not returned their money, and I think that's a common trend in different parts of Europe as well, or here, right? So in this situation, which is quite grim, we see some signs of hope, and I think that here we are to discuss those signs of hope. And we saw them with the 15M, with this social movement that started in the squares of Madrid, but also Barcelona and most of the towns and cities in Spain, where many people gathered to say enough is enough. These institutions are not representing us. There is too much corruption, and we believe that things should be done in a different way. In that moment, people said, like some of the key mainstream media, some of the political parties that have been influential in the transition towards democracy in Spain in the last 30 years, they said, well, you guys should form a political party and run for the elections, run for president. In that moment, it didn't happen, but something was brewing, and that has been one of the driving forces of the political party Podemos. So we are also going to try to understand how that has changed and how that has been born. Podemos was born in 2014. The core of Podemos is some professors from the Complutense University of Madrid, and also some people from an anti-capitalist leftist party called Izquierda Anticapitalista. And well, they started. They got public representation very soon, and we are going to try to understand how this happened. There were local elections last week, and now we have the possibility of governments in Madrid, in Barcelona, in other towns where Podemos and other parties in the left, such as United Left, Izquierda Unida that may rule at least Madrid and Barcelona, so and other towns, as I was saying. So I think that it has been quite impressive, the change from the squares to the institutions. So this was a short introduction. I'm going to leave you with Jesus, who is going to talk more about the change of paradigm and this new way of doing politics in Spain. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So as Victor said, in 2008, more or less, the financial crisis kicked in, and there was actions by the then Premier Rodriguez Zapatero, who decided to transfer the debts from the banks to the state, and this turned the financial crisis into an economic crisis and a representation crisis. That was in 2008. In 2011, just a week before the elections, a movement took place, took the streets, took the squares, in fact, kind of similar to Tahrir, what happened in Tahrir Square, and predecessing by about 6 months, Occupy Wall Street, in which the demands were things like, we don't want to be commodities in bankers' and politicians' hands. At the same time that was happening, the right-wing government took control of literally all the power in the state. And when I speak the state, I don't just speak of the state that we elect, I don't just speak of the judges, but they also had control of the media, control of the judges, control of the parliaments, control of the almost all the governments at all levels, right? However, in spite of that, there was a cultural reaction. So a cultural reaction means that it's not something that necessarily gets representation, but it's a shift of paradigm where most people realize or started feeling that their social rights that they assumed that they were a common consensus were stripped from them. And they were stripped from them not because they stopped supporting that, not because there was an election that actually, someone actually said, oh, I wanna suppress all these rights, but because the elites put themselves out of the consensus. So this creates a representation crisis. So we have different subaltern sectors, and I may include, public education sector, the health, the users of health services, young people who are either unemployed or with very precarious jobs. All of them realize that these problems they're suffering, they are political problems. They politicize these problems. So what does politicize mean? It means that they stop living those problems individually and they start seeing those problems as a collective problem with common culprits, with victims, with common roots, with solutions taken to solve them that not only don't solve them, but actually make them worse, and with a possible alternative solution that would actually solve the problem. So all these groups that we call subaltern, because they're not in the center of the political discussion, don't really have much in common. Okay, they don't identify themselves as a working class. And those who try to tell them, you are the working class, you are a worker, they just look at them like, what are you talking about? So what actually joins them is not what they have in common that they are suffering, but a common culprit. They identify politicians and economic powers as the responsible for their situation in each individual personal problem that they start living collectively. And a very important problem that they left is housing. So there is a space for aggregation of demand. However, this doesn't happen in May 2011 when people take the streets. There's no aggregation of these demands for change. They don't crystallize into a political representation option. We have to wait till 2014, in May 2014, when there are European elections, which are a very particular kind of elections, and what I would call the dynastic parties. These are parties, like social conservatives and social liberals, the equivalent of Democrats and Republicans in this country. They pass from having 82% of representation to only 50%. At the same time, a new party, Podemos, which was founded with very, very little infrastructure in January 2014, in May 2014, achieves 8% of representation, which is something that it's barely symbolic because it doesn't really give them any power, but it gives them a lot of symbolic power. It starts to look like there is a possible alternative for government. And it's not only Podemos, like other groups, including United Left, who got a better result, including maybe some regional groups that would group themselves into the European left in the European Parliament, got 20%, which is still very symbolic and very precarious, but it showed that something was changing. So in this context of these elections, it's where Podemos surges as a credible option that can deal what in Gramsci's terms is known as a war of position in the interior of the state. So what does this mean? It means that there is an option to redistribute wealth, right, and to change the way people think about the political options and what is possible and what is not, and to and this is way more important, to reconstruct the people as a political actor. So this is, we don't think of the working class as a crucial political actor anymore, but we think about something bigger, the people as all the people who live in the country, nationals or not, immigrants as well, as one actor with common interest that requires a political representation that is not available until these elections. So this has happened before in many countries, even in Spain, when there is a cultural change of mind, but it doesn't necessarily crystallize in a political representation. The reason that happens, in my humble opinion, is due to prowess of the new political forces and the choices they make, which are somewhat controversial when you speak about them in a place like the Left Forum. So I hope you don't get too upset, maybe a bit upset. So the first one is to throw away all the dogmas, flags, identity symbols of the left. Why? In Europe in the last 30 years, in Spain probably since the late 1930s, there wasn't a strong leftist feeling as we would understand it here in the Left Forum. So what our enemies would love to is to picture us as pothead communists who, think about the Soviet Union and don't really have a viable option, or even worse, as professors of politics, as he said, Podemos search. So we try to situate ourselves as identifying ourselves with the people, because we feel that using existing identities, which may be controversial, as nation, for instance. To speak of nation is something, especially in this country, that's associated with crazy Republicans, right? So we say, no, we can talk about nation as, what is the nation? What's the state? The state provides social services for everyone, right? So if you need social services, the nation is yours, and you have to, join this national movement. And I'm aware that this is a controversial choice, and in fact, in Spain doesn't work particularly well because of the dictatorship that we had for 40 years that identified the nation with itself. But if you manage to push this forward, you disarm the right, because the right loves to take out the debate and just talk about nation and use that to send immigrants away. So we don't use the nation to, as a way of pushing out immigrants, but as a way of including everyone in the same boat and trying to find a solution for everyone. The second dogma we throw away is the left and right paradigm. Again, what does the left, I don't even know, how many of you know where left and right originally come from? Why is left what we do and right what we don't? Like 2 people, maybe. So it comes originally from the way people seated in the French Parliament, right? And it's a relative metaphor, right? In the French Parliament, where there were the supporters of the king and the supporters of, Republic, as far as I learned in school, the ones who were more progressive sat on the left side of the Parliament, and the ones who were more conservative sat on the right. And since then till now, we have identified those metaphors with our political choices. The problem of this is that it's a relative metaphor, right? So the center is placed where the hegemonic forces decided to place it. And in the case where the hegemonic forces have been winning for the last 40 years or so, they put the center exactly what they want, what we call right. So if we use that to create identities to help to gather support, we are in trouble, right? Because then we're going to be seen as, they are too far. The important thing is the center, and I tell you what the center is. So we try to look for, if you want, in Marxist terms, more materialist metaphors that don't look at a relative setting, but at a more absolute one. So I think here in the United States, you have the 99% and the 1%. That's a relative metaphor. I may be conservative, I may you know, not to have sexual relationships till marriage or whatever, but I know I'm not rich. If I'm not rich, I must be on the 99%. And then you start to listen, rather than if you're told, no, left, come here to the left. That doesn't necessarily work. This is not something we just come up with. This is very, okay, I have to be finished. This is something very old. So it builds on words of Gramsci, Laclau, Move, and it's been used in some way in Latin America. So I had some other things that maybe I'll pass to the discussion. One of them is the use of television as a political field, because that's how people make up their minds. And I can talk about the example of Baltimore a month ago. I come from Baltimore, and I think it's very different what happened from what the television shows. So we saw that television was a way of, you know, gathering support, that we had to be there. Other things are strong leaderships that we may also discuss about, and the way of putting all this together into a discourse that's simple, is clear, and at the same time can be understood by everyone without simplifying too much. So thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Jesus. And now Berta and Cristina are going to talk about the tools and methods that people are using now in Spain to try to do politics in a different way. So Cristina first.
So I'm going to start talking about the methodology of the assemblies, or the assembly methodology, because if someone asks me my opinion about what are the essential keys of this change, I will say that one of the keys was the assemblies. So it's impossible to address this subject without reviewing the implications reached by the 15M in this new form of collective organization. So the 15M represented, first of all, a political challenge, and for all of us, and also it was a catalyst for human interactions. So in the end, the 15M had two principal effects. The first effect was that it was able to consolidate or unify movements that were spread out before, movements that were separate. There were a lot of associations and groups that they were working from before the 15M, and they had a lot of experience, but with the 15M gathered them in the same space to talk about their experiences. So the 15M put together all these new experiences, which at the end, it created like new ties of cooperation between existing movements. The second effect is that 15M triggered the sense of citizenship, of belonging, which was very beautiful. People starting to feel that they were part of something bigger, of the same, and which is very important also is that it boosted the level of the political consciousness it boosted like a new level of political consciousness. So people were more engaged, more empowered, and they wanted to learn about politics, about new techniques, about what was happening. So the role of the old activists, the most experienced activists, was very important because they transmitted all this knowledge that they had from before to the people who wanted to learn. So this revolution has crystallized, and it's still present thanks to the autonomy of the movement. And how do we get this autonomy? We get this autonomy by education, peer education, by popular transmission, and a system where the decisions are made more equal, where we consider all people equally. So this system is called assemblies. And now you will say, okay, so what's the assembly methodology? I want to read this because I want to make sure that I say it correctly. So an assembly methodology will be, it is a form of dialogue and decision-making based on respect, cooperation, transparency, and horizontality. So it is a respectful and transparent dialogue that ensures a healthy debate between the rest. So we have to be respectful when we talk. We have to be transparent. We have to be open to others' opinions, and also because the decisions are horizontal and they're group decisions and they try to be horizontal. So we try to do consensus agreements. It is going to try to gather all the spectrums of the opinions between all of us. So what it is very important is the fact that breaking the hierarchies that we used to have making decisions, it is going to encourage the collective construction, the creativity, the search of alternatives, and since we are betting for consensus, we are ensuring the durability of the project because everybody agrees of what we are talking of. Everybody agrees the decision. So we're ensuring the durability of the project. So which kind of techniques are applied in the assemblies? I'm going to be very brief on this because there is a lot of you can find a lot of books about the assembly techniques online, and they're for free. So first it will be the assembly. I'm sorry for this. There will be like the assembly structure, which will be first we have to prepare an agenda for the assembly. Before the assembly, we have to prepare an agenda. We have time distribution, so the assemblies won't be very long. Then there is also, it is very important, the role of the facilitator, who is the person who is going to be dealing with the whole debate and trying. This person will intervene if there is any problem, any conflict, and also he or she will be taking the speaking time of everyone, so the turns. Also. The act, it is very important. Some people will be responsible for making minutes of the topics discussed in the assembly. And these acts should be open to the rest of the people, so we can assure the transparency of what we're talking in the meetings. And then the last thing is, and in this part, is voting. Thank you. It's voting because the ideal situation will be a consensus, but sometimes we cannot get to this point of consensus, so sometimes we have to vote among the different opinions that we have. And then the second part of the techniques of the assemblies is that we got to build new forms of languages. So we always try to have an inclusive tone. We have to be in a positive attitude when we are in an assembly, and we have to work out our empathy, our respect, and to avoid situations of frustration that are going to make people lose motivation on the project, or it can distract the main objective, the main goal, the main target that we're trying to reach with that assembly. And then create a friendly atmosphere, and the symbols. I don't know if you have seen in the videos of the 15M, there were a lot of people doing like this or blocking. So these are new forms of languages that are respectful for the person who's talking, because we are not interrupting every time. We are trying to respect turns, and this is very important. The new way we are having to talk about topics is different, and it allows to have better discussions, so better results, better solutions. So to conclude, I wanted to say that one of the effects of the 15M has been that it was a mean to develop this methodology, which people didn't know about assemblies or anything. People weren't used to be in assembly. Some of them were, but not all of them. So the 15M was a way to grease the activism as a bicycle, to teach people how a new way to talk, a new way to discuss, a new way to prepare solutions between all of us. So I think this have had a significant effect on the new organization of the citizenship. And I'm going to pass. Tania is going to talk about the new tools.
So thank you, Cristina, and thank you, Victor, for the introduction. So there are some social movements that are local, which is the ideal situation because people can meet in person and organize and communicate, which is the best way to do it. But lately, there are some important social movements that are international or national, and they require tools, virtual tools, to work. So, for instance, in Podemos, Estados Unidos, which is the circle of Podemos here in the United States, or Marea Granate, which is an international social movement of Spaniards outside Spain, we need to use certain virtual tools. So, for example, we use Doodle for meetings, we use Mumble for meetings, which allow us to be up to 50 people online talking about something, doing the meetings that Cristina was talking about. We have Hangouts for organizing debates online, where we can see the faces of all the people talking. We have Telegram for instant communication. We have Titanpad for drafting documents. We have Doodle for scheduling. We have AppGrief for voting, which is very important. For example, in Podemos, in Spain or outside Spain, when we need to do we need to vote a decision, they send us kind of a message through the computer or through the cell phone, so we can instantly vote. So you can know what people knows. Like in 10 minutes, you can know what 10,000 people thinks about something, which makes a really powerful tool to communicate and organize. And we have Rise Up or other many different options for email. So I want to share a thought with you, which is never in history before the people, the citizens, have had these amazingly effective tools to communicate and organize against the 1%. So that's one of the main reasons why we think it's our time now. It's time for the people now. And this is probably more than ever easier today than it has been before. So that's it.
Thank you very much. And I think that's something quite interesting that we could discuss afterwards in the Q&A is how these mechanisms of participation and the assembly system, which was fairly horizontal, how it suffers the consequences of organization and political organization. I think that Podemos is a good example of, well, in the end, when you organize, you need someone to take the decisions, and there is a vertical, it's like the iron rule of the oligarchies, right? Like Michels and the SPD, the German SPD in the 19th century, which basically, well, even if the party is very horizontal, you need someone to take the decisions, and for them to be shared by the people without questioning them is not always easy. So I think that's a clear tension that we could discuss about afterwards. And now I'm going to pass the mic to Marga Ferré from United Left, who's going to talk about the impact of the economic crisis in Spain. Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me here. I'm in a country I love and I live in, which is, so let me start from the conclusion of my intervention, which is that we have an opportunity in Spain, even a small opportunity, but the opportunity is there to change at least the neoliberal agenda in the southern Europe. Maybe it's not too much, but believe me, it's too much for a country who has suffered, as we, our people, have suffered the effect of the economic crisis in the last 5 years. Because I would like to insist on this issue. Numbers are cold, but when you live there, it's so sad to see that a country like Spain, who lived in a dream, in a bubble dream during the 90s and the 80s, thinking that we were the 8th economy of the world. The president of the country said that we had the strongest financial system in 2007, 2 months before everything go down. So one of the things that the economic crisis in 2008 in Spain affects was that something in the imaginary of the whole country broke. The idea that if you get a job, work hard, save money, buy a house, a car, have children, go to university, and you will be happy forever, that's broke completely. The sensation that the young people had that they will live worse than their parents is something real. That's the reason, probably, because more than 1 million had left the country, and something very sad to see. In Spain, we have now something that I think from after our civil war never happened, that we have poor workers. I mean, that myth of the neoliberal who said that if you have a job, you are not poor, it does not happen anymore in Spain. We have the 36% of the workers, I mean, people who had a job, whose salary is less than 645 euros per month, which is less than the minimum salary. And counting. Probably the next year, if we don't stop it at the elections, probably the half of the population can live below the 645 euros per month. Not only the young people, the 50% of the less than 26 years old are unemployed, and very well-trained people, by the way. But on the other hand, the question of there is no hope. I mean, all the productive system failed, and what I think capital decided from the south of Europe that we are going to be the Florida of Europe, no? So the sun, beaches, beer, and nothing else. And it's a decision made. And they said to us that in order to be competitive, you have to have less salaries, exactly the 20% less salaries than you have in 1997, which was decided this, by the way. Anyway, insisting that the numbers are terrible, and that is real, something different from other parties of the south of Europe. No? How the people reacted to this economic crisis. So the first reaction to this economic crisis was the traditional one. I'm a leftist, I'm a trade unionist, I'm ecologist, feminist, I mean very, all of the things that define one person of my age. The first reaction of the working class people were to organize a general strike. It failed. So we organized a second general strike. We failed. And we organized a third general strike, by the way, in 2009. And it failed too. It failed in the sense that the government didn't change any of the policies, that they were restructuring the country, because they won. I mean, the country is completely restructured. They won restructuring the capital system, the financial system, and the labor law, who is completely down in the last 3 years. The labor reform was really terrible. So what was the reaction? One of the reactions was the indignados movement and the 15M reaction, all of us. But that was a moment, that's my different maybe, a moment in 4 years ago. And after that, more things happened. There were more strikes in different sectors of the economy, and especially the mobilization of the health and educational teachers, pupils, I mean the whole community in a health system and education system. Why? Because they are destroying it. And they won, by the way. If we don't stop it, maybe we are, in a very fast way, going to a situation we never dreamed 5 years ago. Anyway, my theory, I mean, it's not a theory, it's telling that an opportunity opened in Spain that not happened in Portugal or not happened in Ireland, for instance, no? And I think that is a good option and a good opportunity to think how to transform all these mass movements defending specifically public sectors into a political option. There is Podemos, of course, there is the traditional all left, which is me, by the way, and there is also others, and there is citizens too, I mean, thinking that we need to change something, which is, I think, is the most important thing. This opportunity I'm talking about is not about a revolution, it's about to have a hope and to have a life in your country, which is really a very basic thing, but it's something that we're really in disposal to fight for. So now we have this potential in the elections to win some kind of power, something like I'm very grateful to Podemos, to think again about the power. We didn't think before, how to get the power without the two-party systems we had in Spain. And the question now is, so what the enemy does? I mean, of course, the right-wing party and the capital is not watching us, what you are doing. They are reacting to. Well, let's say first that Spain has probably the most uncivilized right party in Western Europe, and is a completely corrupt party, the ruling party. Corruption is not something apart. It's at the core of the problem. And day by day, the Spanish people is watching on the TV and the papers, or knowing what we suspected, is that the corruption is at the core of the system. We discovered that it was at the core of the king, by the way, or at the core of the judicial system, too. So when we say that there's not only economic crisis, but also a political crisis, it was because all the institutions who was created after Franco dies, which was the crown, the judicial system, the parliamentary system, went into crisis, at least for the most of the population. So what the capital did, my opinion is that they create a new party, which is Citizens, Ciudadanos, it's called. It's an ultra-liberal party, and I'm afraid of that. I mean, I think it's something, that a reaction of the rich, trying to, to use the same metaphors, the same type of, we're going to change the country, these kind of things, no? But in a liberal way, an ultra-liberal way. Fortunately, they are not winning so much as we expected in the elections last week, but I'm terrified of the idea of that, the capital always have an unbelievable capacity of adaptation to all our challenge. No? So that's a danger we have to keep in our mind, how to face on that. No? So finally speaking, this process is a very complicated process. No? We had local elections in Spain the last week. It's long to talk about the result, but anyway, the possibility of that the people, not a political party only, but the people in a popular unity list of candidates, is that in English? No? That we call, in the capital of the city, Madrid, in the second largest city, Barcelona, in Zaragoza, in the north part of the country, in Galicia, it's an opportunity to do that. The reaction of the right wing, you have to listen, the right parties is so funny, that is unbelievable. 2 days ago, one of the leaders of the right-wing party said that we are going to create Soviets in Madrid neighborhoods and make a national call against, coalition against this list of candidates, something unbelievable, but that's the reaction they have. No? That's the reaction of the right, and that's the opportunity we have to have a government for the people and by the people. So that is our challenge now. Do it well, do it properly, and coming back here the next year telling you that we are changed Spain.
Thank you very much, Marga. And now Oriol being part of that process. Maybe Oriol can speak a little bit more about that. Thank you.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. Yeah, and I will try to talk about the Catalan perspective on the issue, which I would like to make it extremely compatible with all the voices expressed here. The take-home message here would be that revolutions take time. And maybe we fail, but at least we tried, right? Gramsci said that a crisis consists precisely in the fact that the old is dying and the new cannot be born. This is exactly what we are facing right now in Spain, in one of the worst crises of its history. I mean, we have to go, for some elements, we have to go to the 19th century to see that level of crisis. Our young welfare state is being dismantled into pieces. The population below the poverty line reached a staggering 30%. Unemployment is at 24%, and if it decreases, it is only because the young are massively immigrating. 500,000 evictions have taken place since 2008. In this emergency situation, however, what is the old and what is the new? Just 1 week ago, there were local elections in Catalonia and regional elections in other parts of Spain. We can say right now, at least, that they were an immense success. 4 years ago, right before the local elections of 2011, we took the squares to declare that the all political parties did not represent us. We wanted a rupture, una ruptura, a breakthrough from the political and economic regime of 1978, created after the death of the dictator. We wanted, in the words of Pablo Iglesias, to break the padlock of 1978. We are completely influenced here by our comrades at the other side of the Mediterranean, our friends of the Arab Spring in Tunisia, Syria, and Egypt, even by the Palestinian First Intifada of 1987, if you are allowed me to say. 4 years ago, the political elites told us, if you want change, do not demonstrate, organize politically, and run for the elections. That's what we did. And we won the elections. Radical democracy won. The two biggest cities in Spain, Madrid and Barcelona, are going to have radical mayors, propped up by collective processes of popular participation. Also in Zaragoza, Cádiz, A Coruña, Santiago, Valencia, and Terrassa, depending on how coalitions go. I think we can say that we still don't believe it. Expectations are now extremely high, and the situation is extremely difficult. But what we have at the present moment in Barcelona is that the future mayoress went yesterday to offer support to workers on strike of a big Spanish company, Telefónica, even confronting the police that wanted to evacuate the building the workers were occupying. That same day, the company conceded to negotiate, a big victory for the movement. Ada Colau was the spokesman of the anti-eviction movement, the PA, an apolitical, grassroots, non-hierarchical organization with immense prestige among the Spanish population in stopping evictions. Amidst this housing crisis, PA has even been liberating the empty houses in possession of the bailed-out banks for victims of evictions. Ada Colau was always there, occupying bank branches and forcing them to negotiate. She decided to run for the local elections, leading a process of popular participation, what we call confluencia popular, in Catalan, confluencia popular, with all the forces of the left. Their motto was, we win by listening to. So they went square by square of the city, engaging in conversation with the population. This generated a lot of hope and was able to mobilize, finally, the working classes. Let's see how it goes. Many people outside Spain interpret the success in these elections as a victory for Podemos. Indeed, Podemos was part of these processes of confluencia popular at a local level. However, at the regional level, where they went with their own name, they did not fare that well. In my opinion, humble opinion, the problem is that in last January, Podemos decided to adopt a very traditional, hierarchical political organization, just like an old political party, the iron law of oligarchies that you were mentioning before. And this disempowered the local circles. This created distrust in a lot of people, as the elections proved, actually. After the success of the local level, the question now is how we manage to articulate this at a higher level of organization, without betraying the principles of bottom-up, popular, radical democracy. The problem is that this higher level, as Jesus was mentioning, implies considering the national dimension, which is extremely divisive in Spain, and of course, with respect to the movement for national independence in Catalonia. I mean, and this is what I wrote, but in that sense, Jesus and Pablo Iglesias really identify in a very good way that you need to articulate social struggle at a national level. In that sense, Podemos is virtually identical to the national independence movement. Of course, you can say that, yeah, it's Pablo Iglesias who is leading it, it's this kind of oligarchy that is leading it, but at the bottom, it's the people who are leading that. And this is what it was proved in the last local elections. The problem is, what is the Spanish people, right? I mean, I consider myself a Catalan, and I want the independence of Catalonia, but without breaking any kind of solidarity with the other left in the rest of Spain. But the problem is that, as Marga was mentioning, there's 20-30% of the population of this completely uncivilized post-fascist party that are, I don't know how to say it, racist against Catalans or display Catalanophobia. And this is a problem for us. As a supporter of the independence of Catalonia, I always had to hear that we were a bourgeois movement. Indeed, this is the case in the city of Barcelona. But when we look at the whole of Catalonia, also in the countryside, this relationship breaks down. In some way, it is just a communication problem. My grandmother, who started working at age 14 in a factory, has a very small pension, but doesn't speak a word of Spanish or English. So then, of course, people in Madrid or in the rest of Europe will always hear me that, yeah, I'm a bourgeois from the city, but not my grandmother. So, in spite of the published opinion, under the control of the national elites right now in Catalonia, the independentist public opinion, the real one, was always majorly left-wing. This is what is leading the independence movement, as it was shown in the last elections, when left-wing independentist forces won against the right-wing. How can we make the popular processes compatible? Like Podemos, the national independence movement, I do think that there's compatibility. After the last elections, this triggered a process of confluencia popular at a national Catalan level between the Catalan section of Podemos, Green Party, Barcelona en Comú, and CUP, the nationalist communist anarchists, if I can define them like so, with even greater dimension and a wider scope at a Catalan national level. On the table, there is the design of a new constitution through a popular process of participation, also Confluencia Popular, at a Catalan level, complementing, coordinating, cooperating, anything you want, but not subordinated to any other constitutional process originating in the rest of the state. This is something very similar to what Pablo Iglesias said in the beginning. Parallel constitutional processes led by the people, bottom-up popular democracy, redefining sovereignty. This actually is a very similar thing to the Kurdish process of democratic confederalism, which, in my opinion, should be expanded all over Europe, also to the other side of the Mediterranean, in order to resist against the current bureaucratic imperialism. That's
Thanks a lot, Oriol. And so we are going to open up for the floor for questions, and I think we are going to have quite a bit of time, so I'm glad that we can engage on a few of them at the same time.
So first of all, you mentioned resources online. Can you make sure that, can you point those out for us so that we know where we can check them out online? I'd love to see those. Also, does the kind of the speeches that you've given today for the panel, if those are available for folks, if you can make those available to us, that would be great. I'd love to read what you all have laid out. So that would be great. I'm working right now for an independent campaign to support Bernie Sanders' run for president. And what we want to do is to create assemblies around the country, similar to what Podemos did, and base it around the presidential campaign. And if there's a way that I can collaborate with any of you or all of you, whatever, like I would love to talk about that, how we can get that happening here in the U.S. And so if anybody would like to speak to me afterwards, I would love to talk to you. My name is Jack Rabbit, by the way. And also, is there any official collaboration between Podemos and Syriza in Greece? Thanks.
While you're developing your experiment, I mean, Spain in the past has, given us some of the best example, like the Republic of 1936-39, the workers' control commune and everything. What is the right wing doing? Because they must fear change, and Spain is loaded with ex-fascist, right wing, ultra right wing. And do you fear tactics from them, or are you, or what are they up to? If you can just.
Last question for this
round. My name is Eric. I am a retired track worker for the New York City subway. I still am active in my union and in a caucus that I helped start, Revolutionary Transit Worker, an openly communist transit workers caucus. We are online, Revolutionary Transit Worker. I think it's interesting that a lot of the new things that the comrades are offering us, if you look at it, they ain't that new. In this country in the 1890s, there was the People's Party, Populist Party they called it, made up of some workers and some farmers. It got pretty big. This was a party that emerged at a time when the working class had not fully crystallized out of the other classes in the United States. So as the working class was not that distinct for many people, working class politics were more difficult. Now, the majority of the world's population is working class. That is, they cannot live unless they sell their labor to somebody else. When I was born, half the people in France, imperialist France, were living in the countryside. This is the change that has happened. This is why the working class is in a position to vie for power. If a lot of young people say, I've been unemployed. Everybody I know is unemployed. I have no contact with the world of jobs. I hustle here, I hustle there. I kind of make a living. How am I working class? When these young people are in motion, in movements like the movement of the squares or other such, their minds are changing fast. This is when revolutionaries should really intervene to make the point. The working class has power, can vie for power. And just one final point here, which is I'm not sure about the general strikes that there were in Spain when these austerity attacks, which must be attacks against democracy, work austerity on people, they don't like it, and they rise up. Ruling class don't like that much, less democracy. But you have general strikes, so-called, run by union bureaucrats for the purpose of getting the workers to hate general strikes. That's a lot of why they do it. Time-limited general strikes with unclear objectives. So I'd like to know what kind of general strikes these were in Spain. And finally, Podemos wishes to be a party for rupture, for breaking with the old way. Let them come out officially for a republic. Down with the damn monarchy. That seems to me like a rather non-revolutionary, in this century, a rather non-revolutionary a kind of change. And, a party that claims to be changing everything should be saying that pretty openly and clearly, it seems to me. Thank you.
And my question is, the speaker from the Izquierda party, she mentioned that a lot of people, well-trained people, are unemployed, and then I did see a couple of documentaries on Vice about that you had a lot of people in Spain that were engineers and highly trained, and one man was an engineer and he had to go to Austria to find work. So I was just curious as to what was causing such high unemployment, and also redefining national sovereignty. I was wondering what you meant by that, because did you mean that Spain would have to leave the EU in order to do that, or is that something that you think Spain can do and still remain part of the European Union? Okay, that's it.
Yeah, sorry. I'm going to answer Jack's question about what tools are we using for communicating through internet. For meetings online, we use Mumble. So we do our meetings here in Podemos, United States. There are members all around the country. We meet with people from other states, and it's a really, really powerful tool. It always works. It has never failed. But it doesn't have camera. You can only listen to people. So if you want camera, then you need Hangouts, but there are probably other resources. That's what we use, but there are probably others. For instant communication through the cell phones, but it can also be done through the computer. We use Telegram, which is very similar to WhatsApp. For drafting documents, sharing documents online that all of us can edit, we use Titanpad, which is also a wonderful tool that never fails. For scheduling, when we have to do a meeting in between 50 people around the countries, when is the best time for everybody? We kind of vote, so it's like an online calendar where you say when it's best for you. We use Doodle. For voting, we use AppGree. Again, there are many other options. And for email, there are a lot of options. We use RiseUp because it's more independent than others like Google or so on.
Okay, I'm going to go very quickly. First thing, the focus is something of Bernie Sanders and wanted to know. We can talk later. Podemos, Syriza, Left United as well. They all belong to the same group in the European Parliament. They have common policies at national level, at European level, and I think I think it's pretty clear they're trying to establish, a South European, call it if you want, front to make sure that we don't become subaltern countries to the northern countries like Germany or maybe even Britain and France. Republic issue with regards to Podemos. Podemos considers that the form of a state, whether we have a republic or a parliamentary kingdom like now, should be open to discuss. But it's not an issue that necessarily changes anything. Changing a king like we have now, which has, his power is not the power that's written in the Constitution, but the power that gives it to be in a position in which he can make phone calls to people. He has a big agenda. He doesn't, it's hard to take him to court, and in fact, when the king cannot be taken to court, his family can. That is the problem. But that problem would happen the same with the president of a republic. It happens with the actual president of the government, who's accountable in courts. So that's not what's going to change. When there is a big change that actually changes the correlation of forces in parliament, an issue like the republic can easily be solved when we open the padlock that closes changing the constitution and opens democracy to all. Not something that you guys asked, but you said something that I absolutely disagree with. It is that Podemos is a vertical party. In Podemos, there's a distinction between activism and representation. I belong to a circle, so I guess I'm an activist. But we don't think that only those who are more politically involved are the ones who have to make the decisions. We think the decisions have to be open to the whole population, not even those that are affiliated to the party, but just to the general public who wants to participate. And we've enabled tools that allow participation of literally any person who's a Spaniard not who's a Spaniard, who lives in Spain or has some connection to Spain and has a mobile phone, so that they can send him a message to go online. There's a confusion, I think, between strong leaderships and vertical parties. Podemos uses strong leaderships. This is through open primaries. They try to put people in, people who are going to gather a lot of big support are the ones who are trying to put at the front when we have open primaries. That may look like their points of view are passed easily because they order so, but they aren't. Like, they are open to everyone's vote. And I know there are problems when, it's big chunk decisions, like big long documents, and there is a problem there, but that's a problem of representation. It's not a problem of, it's not that we are a more vertical party than others. I would say we are a less vertical party than probably almost every party apart from CUP in Catalonia. And in fact, any circle can put forward a proposal, and if it gathers enough popular support, it gets voted in open referendum, not just to members of Podemos, but to the whole citizenship. And I don't want to talk too much, so maybe I'll pass on the other questions for someone else.
I'm going to respond your question, but first I think that Podemos has or at least at the present moment, I see from the outside that Podemos has two souls in some way. One is really based on the popular circles that, for example, we have here, and we are engaging in this in the left forum and so on. On the other side, I maybe detect some degree of top-down strong leadership that as a Spaniard I find problematic, and you can see that, for example, in these issues of rupture, breaking the padlock of 1978, which involves republic and non-monarchy. Podemos decided to Podemos decided from the outside once again what they say is that Podemos decided to conquer the centrality of the board by moderating much more their language. And for example, they decided to put aside some of the issues that are really structural and foundational in Spain. This is a decision that has yet to be taken, who will win, who will not. I would like to see an empowerment, a greater empowerment of the local circles, but maybe That's my personal opinion. In terms of like redefining like national sovereignty, like I consider that our experience in Spain is that bottom-up radical democracy, like through assemblies, through like a lot of citizenship that is involved in the local agora, like it always like, mobilizes much better, like in a much more efficient way. Like this has to be done like from the bottom up. Like the Eurozone, the Euro are like top-down things. So if like our project is going to be at odds with the European project, we have legitimacy. They don't, right? Because we have done that from the bottom up. And for example, in that sense, like Ada Colau, like the future mayoress of Barcelona, if everything goes well, it was suggesting even like to implement a local currency in Barcelona that would be like the biggest city where a local currency has been tried in cooperation, like with a cooperative fabric, you know, in a way that, I mean, it's a very old proposal of in the 30s in the anarchist cooperatives. This would be a way of like also like breaking that like up with the hegemony of the euro and trying to start putting the economy in service of the population. Yeah, that's
Means, ¿cómo se dice golpe de Estado en? Coup d'etat, a white coup d'etat, for instance, not to change it, not to buy in some members of the parliament, not to, you know, because the situation is 50-50 in most of the cities, even in Barcelona or in other places. So there is a risk between today until the 13th of June in which all the major city halls will be implemented, in which our fear is that sometimes they can buy some of the members of other parties in order to make that coup d'etat. But that's not the question for me. The question for me is that for me, the capital has a plan B for Europe, and it's called the TTIP. The TTIP. I mean, if the TTIP is signed the next year, all the things we are fighting for in Spain, public health, education, labor laws, etc., will disappear because there is a superior law. According with Barack Obama, by the way, for which we need to suspend our laws, internal laws, national laws, and to make a common regulation with the United States, for instance, which for the labor movement is something terribly destroying. I think we can stop it, this TTIP, and my hope is based on Greece, and in Varoufakis' sentence telling that the gift of the Greece to the rest of Europe will be to stop the TTIP and not sign it. But anyway, this plan B is on the table. So it's not only a political one, but it's also an economic one. And finally, just to say, for me, the general strike is something always good, even if you don't see the result immediately. I remember when the trade unions in Greece, they organized 13 general strikes. And everybody says, but it's useless, nothing happened. Okay, let's see a left government in Syriza in Greece. And I think it's nothing separated from the 13 general strikes in that country. The problem, I think, in Spain, and I'm a trade unionist, I think the trade union didn't manage well those general strikes. And the citizens and the people, especially the youth, understood better than the trade unions what to do at that time.
I wanted just to point out something that you were saying about the strikes, and I feel it's very interesting about the United States and Europe, or for instance in Spain, is that people are fighting in another level of a base. I mean, like the base is different because in Spain we have public education, we have public health insurance, and here people don't have. So here I think people fear more to go to the streets here because they know that if they lose their job, or if there's something, especially if they lose their job, they're going to lose something more than the job. They're going to lose the education. And if you have a family, you cannot risk that. So I think that's the money of change that the United States, for example, uses against like these kind of revolutions. So I mean that was just a thought because I see the difference there. We have poverty, we have problems, but at the end of the day, we have a system that allows us to protest easily than maybe here. And
Thank you. I'm just going to respond to one of the questions that went unanswered about why there is so much unemployment, or why there are so many doctors working in McDonald's in Spain, or working as doctors in Austria or in the UK or here in the US. I mean, I think that we are a good example. Like in this, around this table, all of us are like mathematicians, anthropologists, architects, chemists. I'm a political scientist, and I'm not sure I would be able to work in Spain, and that's why we came here either for education purposes. I mean, I think to find a job. I think that the main reason is that there has been a lack of investment in innovation and in development, and those things that should change the productive model where that is working in Spain, and I think that's a big part of it. The lack of funding of education. There are like very few people who can do PhDs and then stay working in academia in Spain. I mean, I think that has been part of it. And then I was going to respond to something else. What is the right doing? I think there is something quite interesting, which is, I think, positive, although some people here might think that it's negative, and is that the right parties are taking some of the messages from Podemos and or some of the tools, and they're using them. I think that's negative if they are faking their message, and I think that Ciudadanos is a clear example of that, and what can come from that Podemos of the right, as they are putting it. But there are things that are positive. For example, primaries, like we are seeing the Social Democrat Party, for example, now engaging in more primaries than ever before. Like primaries in Spanish politics were not very common, or politicians making public like their rent, their taxes declarations every year, or things that I think that come from the fact that there's been a lot of push, not only from Podemos, from other political parties, from the streets, like towards against corruption and towards transparency. And I think that's a way of reacting of the right or the center or other political parties. I think that it's positive. At least we can know a little bit more. So we're going to have another round of questions. So if you have, yeah.
Thank you so much. My name is Audrey. I'm Canadian, living in the U.S. for the last 10 years. I'm not exactly sure how exactly to put this, but I'm really struck when I hear about what's happening in Europe, and having lived here for the last 10 years, and sort of being so, I was conditioned growing up to sort of feel entitled to certain social rights, which I think you referred to in your presentation about the paradigm shift, that there was a rupture, there was a crisis of representation because the consensus had been broken. And I think similar sort of when we talk about general strikes in Europe versus here, I mean, you say 3 that failed. What you mean was there was no reaction, but you actually were able to have 3 general strikes. That's not even an option here in the United States. So it's a very different environment here where, I don't think there ever was a consensus on the social rights that people, the country is founded on, market capitalism, free market capitalism, which has never agreed to this social contract that you're talking about in Europe. And so I'm kind of conscious of how that changes the way people organize here and what we're up against. And I'm curious, as you're doing the work that you're doing that's so inspiring, and we're looking to you for inspiration, I'm also like, but we can't even begin to replicate that. We have to really think about how we translate that. And I'm wondering if you have specific things that you think here in the U.S. we should be focusing on, given that we are the sort of belly of the beast here and the role that we play in the empire, while also I guess remaining conscious of the fact that Europe, I have all this like love-hate feelings for Europe, because I'm sort of like, Europe was able to accomplish so much in terms of that social contract based on the plunder of its colonial history as well. So how does that all kind of fit in? And anyway, that's even beyond, I think. But in terms of how the U.S. and Europe can kind of, how comrades across borders can be working together, and the role that you think we should be playing here, not to necessarily replicate what you're doing, but to think about what we can be doing to complement as opposed to replicate.
Hi, well, thank you all for this really interesting panel. My question is for Marga from the United Left. So you thanked Podemos for having engaged in this strategy to take power, to really take seriously the effort to take power. And actually, Pablo Iglesias is very fond of saying that Podemos is not happy with the silver medal. Like, they really want the gold medal. So my question is about your party. Do you think that there has been a mistaken strategy, or do you think that it was absolutely impossible for the United Left to pursue this strategy to try to perhaps gain the center?
My name is Pablo. I just came back from Spain. I was in Barcelona during at the Barcelona en Común celebratory party with Ada Colau, and she was dancing with us, and it was amazing, an amazing emotional. And I just want to say a few things about Podemos and and Guayem, right? So I think there's two things going on here, right? It seems to me from what we can tell, there's a Podemos, which is a kind of top-down kind of, their success came from this cadre, this group of folks who tried an impossible campaign and struck gold in the last elections, right? And then since then, they've been trying to create, with these tools of decentralized decision-making, the ICPs, right? These citizen initiatives, right? And binding referendum of trying to open it up, right? With Círculo, Podemos, and et cetera, which you all are part of. And I think that's admirable. I mean, there's so much we can learn here in the United States about how to help decentralize these structures, right? And then there's this, as you were talking about, right, Guanyem, this kind of bottom-up municipalist movement, right, that has really helped change the weather as well, right? It's brought new people, new voters out to the polls, right? So you have two different strategies, right? Obviously, Guanyem probably wouldn't have been possible without Podemos, right? And my question is, I mean, not necessarily, right, but in terms of the scale of what they've been able to do so quickly, I think that definitely is the momentum that was created since last year, right? So my question is, right, there's this kind of tension, and Podemos is many things. It's not just Pablo Iglesias, it's not just Inigo and all these folks, right? It's folks like you, it's these círculos, it's this whole mobilization. But I wonder that there is obviously, we perceived a tension between decentralizing decision-making in Podemos, just to give you an example, not a single citizen initiative has actually gone on for voting toward the referendum because the threshold is too high. And they can actually, right now it's at 10% of the whole Podemos community, which is over 2,000 registered users, 2 million, registered users, which is a huge threshold for anything, but not everyone's active, blah, 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 other things. But then the question is, right, do you think there are things that Podemos can learn from this municipalist movement that has shown that, it's important to have a vision and be charismatic in front of television cameras, etc., but of decentralizing power and decision making, and I wonder, just what everyone's take on that is.
Hi, thanks a lot. My name is Matt Cordero, and I was particularly curious about the TV and the media and how that was used as a platform to sort of it seems like propagate lots of ideas, which then made change the game enough that made organizing easier. So folks could what was that, and go into the cultural context of it.
I was wondering if you could comment on the European international debt. I gather Spain has a little bit less of a debt now than it maybe a couple of years ago, but I'm not sure that that's accurate. But I understood that I'm not clear what Podemos's position is on dealing with the debt. I understood Iglesias wasn't supporting Syriza's stance, so maybe you could explain that a little bit more about what you think about that. The other thing I just was curious about is to what degree people for example, in Podemos, actually do discuss the 1930s at all. I know when I was in Spain, I was told that people don't really discuss that. It's like a taboo subject. So I'm not really sure people who are political, how much, I've often been told that people in the United States actually know more about it sometimes in the left than people in Spain. And so I just be curious as to whether you think that's true or what you think about that.
This a left party, as the name said. We were wrong in our strategy probably, but let me put it like that. We were very good in a resistance option, defining the idea that the people on the streets and people own the institutions, together we can push in the right direction. And probably we were wrong in a lot of things, I'm sure about that. But at least we defend also. We are people who do believe in left values, and we still believe that they are means things. I respect Podemos a lot, and I think there is a good thing about Podemos as a phenomenon in my country. But I do believe that these values are valuable and can help in the movement that all together can push in the right direction in a country who knows perfectly well what a popular front is and how to working together is better than doing it for ourselves.
Yeah, I'm answering your question about how many people think that Podemos was Pablo Iglesias' idea, and then he created the circles and all that you said. It probably was his idea and some other people's idea, but then he didn't, not he, but Podemos was created and everything was voted. So he has been voted by the people. He wouldn't be there if people hadn't voted him. And that's very important. That's why it's not vertical, as Jesus was saying, because every single member of the Consejo Ciudadano has been voted by the people whoever, you don't need to be from Podemos, any citizen can vote. You just have to give your ID and vote online. And every single member has been voted. That's very important.
So, I think on that question which is quite relevant today, like what can Podemos learn from these municipal processes of convergence? I think that's what, I mean, I'm an activist and I'm not in the decision-making process in the top of the organization, but I think that's the kind of question that Podemos should be asking themselves today, the people that are taking the main decisions, and I think that I would love for us as circles to have something to say. I'm not sure how that's going to be organized, but I think that the idea of broader processes of convergence at the regional and national level would be needed to win the next elections, and I think that I hope, and that's my personal opinion, that the United Left should be there, and that a lot of like social movements that have been very active in Spain should be also present in that kind of process, because there is so much at stake, and I think that the government, Spain, like the society, cannot afford to have another government of the Conservative Party. On the issue of the debt in the European elections, one of the commitments was to make a public auditing of the debt and being able to evaluate whether the money which had been borrowed was being spent in the right things or not, and which were, like, if the conditions were right and the conditions were fair for the country, and sort of assess which kind of debt should be kept being serviced and which debt shouldn't be like cancelled or renegotiated the terms of the debt. That was in the European elections. I don't know what will be in the program of the national elections. I'm sure that everyone will be following very closely what happens in Greece, and I think there's a lot of pressure putting on Greece on that by the International Monetary Fund and others. And in the 1930s, I think that's a very good question. And I think that it's true. And I think that part of the idea about the republic, the idea about the breaking with the previous symbols from the left, which has been a very clear phenomenon in Podemos. One of the consequences has been but we don't discuss history that much. We don't discuss the politics of memory, which in Spain is still in Spain is still something that it hasn't been addressed. And it's true that I'm sure that in this room there is much more knowledge about the international brigades than in a classroom in Spain, and it's also because of the way history has been taught in Spain during 40 years, where sort of the first democratic elections were in 1977 as opposed to being in 1932. That's what is being taught, even though it's wrong. So yeah, I think that's something that Podemos should look into. That I think that, but clearly it's not being done.
Okay. Adrian asked or mentioned the consensus broken. The consensus were broken, but they were broken by the elites, and this is very important. Like, it's not that the people collectively have a problem about whether oh, I'm not sure if health should be public or no. The elites unilaterally decide on this, and that is what can be used to aggregate demands. So there is there's a relation between this social consensus and irreversibility, right? If we make policies, if we look for strategies to make policies irreversible, so that they cannot be turned back, then those consensuses appear naturally, right? I don't know how it can be constructed, but I think the only well-documented example that I know of is the National Health Service in the United Kingdom. There's a very good film, it's a documentary called The Spirit of 45. So you might want to look into that. I don't think it's possible to, Marxism is like rice. You cook it in a different way in different countries. I don't really know how it would be done here. Maybe the television is the only thing I find in common between here and Spain. And this links to his question over there. So Podemos, and not only Podemos, also people in Left United like Alberto Garzón choose the television as a political field, and this was a new thing, and this is not easy. So there are two bits. One, how you get to television, I'll talk about in a second, and why is television important. So I don't know if you saw about what happened in Baltimore last week. If I ask, probably most people here, and definitely everyone in the street, would say there were Baltimore riots. However, on Twitter, the hashtag was Baltimore Uprising. What's the difference between one and the other? The difference between one and the other are the CNN and Fox News. Most people don't go to Twitter, don't go to the internet. Maybe activists do, maybe some young people do, but most people make their minds out through television. They don't go to Baltimore to check. So I live in Baltimore. I didn't see any violence. The only violence was the National Guard, being there with these massive guns. It was really scary. But everyone was behaving pretty peacefully. I know there were maybe 2 cars burned. I don't think it amounts for as much as having 2,000 soldiers occupying a city. But that wasn't told like that in the media. So this is why it's important. Now, how do you get to the media? Corporation, and this is where you can use capitalism against itself. Corporations, media corporations are, they are capitalist entities whose target is to make money, and they make money by people watching their things. I mean, it's a bit more complicated with publicity and so on, but basically by seeing people watching their things. If you manage to appear once or twice on TV, and in that once or twice you raise the audience of that particular channel, which is what several new politicians like Pablo Iglesias, but also Alberto Garzón did on Spanish TV, that means that they call you again. They don't call you because they suddenly became Marxist. No, they called you because their program gets bigger audience than the next one, right? And that's why they call. And I think it's important to create a speech that makes people listen to you and identify with you, even if it's not the most, orthodox speech you can get to. That's going to raise the audience. It's going to make people listen to you. They're going to call you again, and then the wheel starts turning. I've talked too much. I just want to say one thing about the problems of representation that someone said over there, that Podemos has a method. Podemos was innovative in how decisions were taken by allowing anyone to sign up to choose just with an email and start voting on things. Now, in order to have quorum, you want at least 10% people making decisions. What happens? That many people sign up, and then later they make one decision. They later never sign up again, and they keep appearing as people who make decisions. So then the consensus is not reached because those people don't decide to vote anymore for whatever the reasons. This is a problem, and I honestly think it's a problem that wasn't overseen when the method was chosen, and it should be addressed somehow. But this is a very particular year in which we have like election after election after election. So I don't think there's going to be time to make the decision this year, but I definitely think it should be addressed about learning from local unity groups which have won elections. I don't think, if you check the data, the only big difference has been in Madrid. In other places, unity groups have got more or less the same as Podemos at regional level. I think if something can be learned, for instance, from Ada Colau or from Manuela Carmena in Madrid and Barcelona, is to be able to, to show empathy. I think one problem of Podemos is that not necessarily shows empathy to everyone, and these two leaders from local groups do. And maybe we should learn from that. But I also know there are very different examples, and the circumstances weren't the same across the country.
Hi. Well, yeah, I wanted to wrap up some answers to your questions. Okay, so first of all, I wanted to reply to you. Spain is not France. I mean, like the legacy of colonialism that I'm like the first one to acknowledge for in Spain actually like brought a lot of inequality in Spain and empowered a completely crooked and corrupt elite that we have not defeated yet. Like there's a perfect continuous line from the colonization to now. They were the ones that staged the coup d'etat in the 30s. They were the ones that devised and designed the Spanish Constitution in 1978. It was not a social contract. It was an agreement between elites with the acceptance of the people. Like in the way that you had like a massive army that had just like genocided its own population 40 years ago in the 30s. I mean, Spain is the second country with more mass graves in the world after Cambodia. So we are dealing with that kind of crooked elites. And so sometimes, like we say, oh yeah, they broke the social contract, but I mean, we didn't have like a social contract like decided by the people in an authentic democratic process. Other issues. I'm constantly thinking about the 30s. I mean, it's a very important moment for Spain, also for Catalonia. I mean, Catalonia was independent, like de facto in that moment, and we had a dual power with very like strong collective participation of workers in the workplace, like a lot of anarchist cooperatives, and then the bourgeois power that was led by the leftist nationalists. It would be interesting to investigate an update in a more democratic way of that period for Catalonia. One can also even understand a lot of the problems that right now we have, like by thinking in the 30s. For example, there's a lot of grievances between the post-communist Green Party, Iniciativa per Catalunya in Barcelona, and CUP, that are like nationalists and Catalan nationalists and more anarchists. This also in some way is a revision of the tension between the Communist Party and POUM, like Stalinists and Trotskyists of there, because they obey to similar genealogies. I don't know, I mean, it's a bit mishmash of everything. Concerning the TV, I wanted to mention that it's quite interesting because Pablo Iglesias appeared a lot of times in La Sexta, a leftist, slightly leftist TV channel. I mean, we can argue about that.
Relatively speaking.
Oh?
Relatively speaking.
Yeah, relatively speaking, like, yeah, with respect to Fox News. And, but it's interesting because no nationalist leader of Catalonia, Basque Country, Valencia appeared there. Like even like when they were showing the surveys and the polls, they deleted the name of the political parties that were nationalist, and like they won in Valencia, for example, Compromís. So it's also like very interesting, like this tension that is happening, I think, in Podemos, that they have to decide like who to go with in some way. Like sometimes they decide to go with more moderate elements in the state, or for example, with people that maybe want more radical forms of democracy that also involve like nationalist elements. But of course, we will see how it goes, and democracy is the most important thing. And concerning the euro, or concerning the public debt, it's not a problem of debt. It's a problem of the euro. And the euro is not an economic problem, but it's a political problem. And like, I mean, economists, I'm studying economics right now, but economists say if there was political will to resolve the crisis, it would have been done like this. The thing is that there's like a kind of sort of imperialistic project on Reaganomic lines to create a bureaucratic project with no real popular participation. And this is what we are fighting right now in like not only in Catalonia, not only in Madrid, in Spain, not only in Greece, like everywhere. And we have to think like in European terms. And actually this is one of the problems of a lot of Catalan nationalists, because we are also facing, should we leave or stay in the euro? What should we do with the euro? You know, and there's always these questions, but how we challenge them, right? I mean, it's difficult. Yeah.
I'm going to be very brief. So about what you were saying of where do we start here in the U.S., I think U.S. has the power to be an example for the rest of the world. I mean, anything that happens here is the day after is all in the media in the rest of the world. So it's not us just talking about our things and giving you the speech. I think you have the option, as we did and as we do, and I encourage you to try, to learn about these new ways of yeah, we're also finishing, so I don't think it's a problem. So I encourage you to learn about these new ways of debating or making decisions, about new ways of behaving between each others, new ways of talking, which I really think it was a very beautiful movement, because we felt all together as a group. We felt that no matter what kind of ideology you have, we are facing the same problems. And I think here in the U.S., I'm sure you all have the same problems to face against together. Yeah. So I hope this event is not going to stop here. I hope you can try to research more about what we're doing. We're always open to receive. Like, if you need help with anything, we will be so happy to show you, how are our dynamics, and that's it. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Let me just say that we learned a lot from your questions, and I think that let's keep this conversation going. There's a very good article of Pablo Iglesias in the New Left Review. I think that it sheds some light on some of the issues that have been discussed here. So I encourage you to read it. And thank you very much.
Well, there's like a reason actually. I'd like to know about. Let me see if I can.